across Texas. The issue is.
I'm Stephen Dial in Dallas.
I'm Greg Groogan in Houston.
And I'm Rudy Koski in Austin, and this is Texas, The Issue Is.
The Republican National Convention is over, and now Donald Trump and Senator J.D. Vance are the official GOP ticket for President of the United States. What we saw during the convention were more black and brown faces as the party tries to attract more minority voters, and new polling shows that the Republican Party could be making cracks in the once solid wall of minority support for Democrats.
I'm the great-great-grandson of a slave. I'm the son of a retired lieutenant colonel. I'm the product of West Point along with my other two siblings.
During the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, the party tried to show they have more diversity.
The heart of today's woke Democrat Party is with the criminals, not with their victims.
Throughout the week, black leaders such as Houston area Congressman Wesley Hunt and Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson had primetime speaking roles.
They've had African-American figure after African-American figure at various levels of government. People running for governor, people who are in Congress, mayors like Mayor Johnson speak to the convention, Amber Rose speak to the convention. Clearly, this has been a concerted effort to say the Republican Party is not just for white people.
While a vast majority of African Americans tend to vote for Democratic candidates, this election could present the start of a noticeable shift. Polls are also showing shifts with Hispanic voters as well. A University of Houston, Texas Southern University poll taken prior to the assassination attempt of Donald Trump shows numbers which some Democrats may find troubling. The poll, taken at the end of June, said 16% of black voters said they would vote for Trump in Texas, up from 11% in April. 45% of people polled from the Latino community said they would vote for Trump. That's an increase from 41% in April. I talked to SMU political scientist Matthew Wilson.
I think it's worth noting that the great majority of the African-American speakers that have been featured at this convention have been men, because that's where Trump and the Republicans see a real opportunity. The polling shows a big gender gap in the African-American vote, even more so than we see among white voters. That is, black men are much more responsive to Trump's and Republicans' appeals than black women have been, at least so far.
When the topic focused on the politics of the convention, Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson bashed Democrats on public safety. Johnson was a Democrat state representative in Austin. He switched parties after winning re-election for mayor.
Democrats in power demonstrate they don't care about stopping the killers or the thieves who terrorize black and brown communities.
Congressman Hunt claimed inflation has risen under Biden, which is true. But there have been consecutive months of inflation slowing, but not enough to make a significant difference when it comes to expenses of average Americans.
We owe it to future generations to embrace this pivotal moment.
All right, well, my word for that interview, that story, is encroachment. I'll explain later. Greg, what about you?
Stephen, I almost chose entice, but settled on the word sway.
Okay, Rudy?
I'm going to modify a word that Congressman Hunt used. My word is pivot.
Gotcha. All right, the Fox Texas Trio will be back to discuss if the Republican Party is really making inroads in taking Democrat voters. We'll be back. The Fox Texas Trio is back. Let's jump right in. Greg, you're up to bat first. The poll that we were referring to is a Texas poll saying that Republicans are making inroads, at least in this race, when it comes to minorities. But other polling, CNN and others have said nationwide they are seeing a similar trend. Greg, should Democrats be worried?
Stephen, given how close the last presidential election was, it better trigger ear-splitting alarm bells among Democratic decision makers. Maintaining an overwhelming plurality of black and Latino voters is at the very core of their winning formula. Any significant erosion could be catastrophic in swing states, and the Texas numbers could be a harbinger of what we see in the fall. A growing number of native-born and legally immigrating Latinos are livid about Biden's open border policy, and a growing number of black voters feel underserved by the current administration and less prosperous because of inflation. Bottom line, at this point in time, if Democrats truly believe they can bank on as many minority votes as they attracted in 2020, I believe they are in serious trouble, because you can't focus on swaying critical independents when your core constituency is eroding around the edges.
I agree with you. And on this, I mean, the black vote and the Hispanic vote are, in my opinion, a little different, because some black people feel that Democrats just assume that they're going to vote for them. The Hispanic vote is really changing to Republican in certain areas. Rudy, you're up next. Is this just something that is a Trump outlier, or is this a change that Democrats need to be prepared to combat for years to come?
Stephen, I think what's happening is a reflection of what's happening across the country as a whole. Greg kind of touched on this, and this is why my word is pivot, and it's simple economics. It seems to be the driving force, aggravated by what you were referring to earlier as Biden fatigue. Now, consider this. A recent report by the Pew Research Center shows the service sector is where most Americans are now working. Millennials, those 23 and 39, have become the largest generation in our labor force, bypassing Gen Xers and baby boomers like our good friend Greg. As for African Americans, the Bureau of Labor says more than 12 million are in the workforce, with top occupations in healthcare, transportation, security. Among black workers, the research found they earn less, the unemployment rate is higher, and 51% said being black makes it harder to succeed where they work. So Republican strategists know this, and they're trying to tap into that frustration by saying Democrat Party policies have failed and the new progressive movement is just flat out ignoring black voters. That pitch, I believe, is gaining traction. As you mentioned, Stephen, over the past 2 decades, younger black voters, according to Pew, are trending more Republican. So that snowball you mentioned, Stephen, is building and may very well become a GOP voting bloc snowman.
Hey, and let's keep it on this survey that was done by the University of Houston and Texas Southern University. Greg, in that survey, it said that millennials, people my age, are still breaking for Biden in this race, whereas Gen Zers, or Gen Xers, are breaking for the former president, Donald Trump. Is this a case of, I mean, we know Republicans' base is majority older people. Let's just be frank. Those people will move on, and millennials will start to be the older people. What does the age gap trend say to you?
Look, Stephen, newsflash, old people vote. Repeat, old people vote. Youngsters, not nearly as much. My friend Bill King always says consistent voter participation coincides with the acquisition of a mortgage. And while voter participation by those ages 18 to 34 increased significantly in 2020, more than 74% of voters over 65 cast a ballot. As for the future, I think Trump's selection of a charismatic 39-year-old running mate speaks volumes. Bottom line, go to where the votes are. And until young Americans prove different, the mother lode in this country is over the age of 50.
Rudy, what's your take?
Well, I think that the reason why Trump picked his VP is to go after the Rust Belt, not necessarily the younger voter. But I think both parties are being forced to rethink their branding. You know, another pivot there. And for Democrats, it's not just about who will be their presidential nominee. That's a big question going into this weekend when they get ready for holding their convention next month. But will the progressive shift left continue with doubling down on ideas like gender identity and expanding social programs? Here, for example, right here in Austin, City Council now wants to get into the banking business, start doling out money themselves. They want to become a new food provider in the community by having city-owned farms to eliminate what they call urban food deserts. So as for Republicans, during the convention, they were clearly trying to pivot. Nikki Haley's big tent speech was about addressing that party's racial divide. And the GOP leadership realizes that they've got to go younger too, Stephen.
All right, well, that's all the time we have for now. To see this episode or any of our past ones, go to our station's YouTube channel.
And you can keep the conversation going by going to our social media sites.
And the Fox Texas Trio will be back next week with yet another hot political issue. In the meantime, don't forget to let us know what you think the issue is. All right, good men.